KBKW's Coffee Talk. It is now 7:10, and historian Stephen Arms is with us. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning again, Doug.
Well, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, all in all. I've been listening to some of your early comments at the show at 6 o'clock. So I did jot down a couple of notes on something. I thought you might want to. You had a person who called in dealing with the executions in North Korea.
Right.
It's Kim Chol, and I assume it's Cole with a K. But he was the one of his top negotiators, and apparently him and four others were executed this month by firing squad. That's not being that's coming out of North Korea. South Korea's intelligence hasn't confirmed that, and U.S. intelligence haven't confirmed that. And it's interesting that his you have to always look because there's too many Kim Jong. I'm sorry, I can't remember his last. Kim Jong-hyuk, I believe, is his one that was the one that delivered the letter to Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He's apparently in hard labor right now. They have him in prison in hard labor.
Now, was there a reason given in the news release from North Korea for this?
North Korea's North Korea's propaganda machine, which is its news thing, is saying that the ones who were executed had been corrupted by the Western values, and they were no longer trusted by Kim's government.
Oh, so they were over here part of the time?
No, they were the ones who negotiated. Right,
but
Trump.
I'm just wondering, did they ever leave the country and come over here?
No, the only one they did is the one that said he's in hard labor.
Oh.
But the other ones apparently were the ones that went to South Korea during the negotiation. And one of those apparently is the interpreter, what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So there's 5 that were total, at least according to North Korea. And I don't have a reason to doubt it. I mean, Kim killed his own family members. He's a dictator. I mean, what are you going to deal with?
I think this has something to do with his fear of being deposed.
See, that's the thing about it is that they ignored the fact, a lot of people in the news, that during the negotiations at one point right before it, he had several military officers that disappeared, ended up incarcerated or executed because they were hardliners and he was wanting to do negotiations. So if you speak out against Kim, I mean, when he's going one way, they have a high job turnover rate over there in his administration. So.
See, Trump just calls you a name that you don't like.
I don't think anything to worry. Despite the screams and the hand wringing of a lot of our media about that. I mean, as far as I know, none of them have been shut down. None have been incarcerated. None of them have even been seriously investigated. You can't make that for the last couple of presidents' administrations. In both of those cases, they've cracked down on news media people.
So, how? When?
Well, Barack Obama's administration did some investigations into some people at Fox and some other people because they didn't like their particular. Brett Baer was one of the ones who got into that, or I think it was Baer.
Baer.
Yeah, Brett Baer had. I maybe remember the name wrong, but one of their people had been investigated by Barack Obama's administration because making some comments they didn't like. He didn't go to jail or anything, but it did end up. Obviously the intelligence community was investigating this person, which is done as a form of intimidation.
Well, I mean, Merkel, was having her phone calls from her limousine monitored by the U.S. So
but the U.S. is really interesting. But again, there's a differences between monitoring American citizens. The warrants required to monitor foreign people is very different than the warrants required to monitor Americans. Again, those are FISA warrants that you have to get for that, and those are supposed to be a whole other method in how that they're handled. They have to go to a FISA court, it has to be approved, and it has to be all the information has to be put forth. It's a very complicated procedure. But having said that, it also doesn't change the fact that the FISA court pretty much rubber stamps anything that people bring in.
Of course, you go back and look at the days when there was the commie scare and people were testifying against others just to save their own skin, and they were lying the whole time because you had McCarthy and whoever else. I think Nixon was involved in that too, wasn't he?
To some extent, yeah. But most people always remember that from the House Un-Americans Activities Committee. That was the big one that had a lot of the ones in there. And people assume McCarthy's involved in that, but I would also point out that McCarthy was a senator. the House committees, when they're the ones who did most of it. When you talk about the blackballing out of Hollywood and the things that were happening, because it got to be fair to remember that in the 30s in the United States, communism kind of at that point, the communist revolution had ended, obviously, and we have Lenin in charge, and unfortunately Stalin in the background, and communism got kind of fashionable in the United States. People wanted, like sometimes like people do now, not knowing the monstrous thing that you're actually dealing with, the amount of people that are going to die because of it. And, they got to be the whole American Communist Party came into existence in that time. And it was investigated back then by intelligence also, because most of them realized that this is a problem.
Well, look at Lindbergh. He thought Hitler was a good leader,
Well, like I said, Adolf Hitler is one of those ones that people don't like to talk about him because Hitler's a monster. And I go, Hitler is a monster, but it's like people that are monsters doesn't mean that you don't want to look at their lives and understand their thinking,
right.
Because Hitler and Stalin are monsters, but they're also in a lot of ways brilliant. You can be brilliant and be an evil person too.
Sure.
I mean, and that's the thing. Hitler was a master of propaganda. I mean, he took a broken country and put it within one step of world domination in a period of like 20 years. I mean, that's exceptional in the context of a twisted genius. But doesn't mean you shouldn't understand.
Well, he became a drug addict. I mean, he was so wired up all the time. By the time the war was about half over, he wasn't making any decisions that made any sense anymore.
Well, no, that shows in him the fact that he sent forces into Russia during the winter campaign. The one rule of thumb Napoleon learned that is don't invade Russia. And the one general that cannot be defeated amongst the Russians is General Winter.
Exactly. And the thing is, I mean, Stalin just moved all his factories and everything farther east, out of where the Germans were able to penetrate. And then with the Lend-Lease program, we were piling in all the war equipment they needed. So
there's a lot of factors to it. I thought that on a lighter tone, the one thing I noticed in the news this morning was that Ben & Jerry's is going to have CBD-infused ice cream as soon as it's legal for them distributed across the country. So they're going to put cannabis oil in ice cream.
I think they're going kind of nuts with the cannabis stuff.
I think a little bit,
Well, yeah, because they think it's a cure-all for everything, And I'm not saying that there isn't some pharmaceutical things about it that's good, but, I mean, it's like sometimes people will go out and sell stuff like it's snake oil.
Well, it is. In the case, I think cannabis oil and snake oil is really a difference in the term lots of time. Again, it's like, I know that I don't want to be against chiropractors, but I know chiropractic, for example. I think chiropractic is very of value to people who have issues with their spine and need to have it manipulated. And I know people have had it done and have had good results from it. But I've been around people who swear that chiropractic cures piles and pneumonia and cancer and everything else, and I go, it's you give it the value of what it is. And again, the rule of thumb is anything that is too good to believe is probably because it isn't true. I mean,
but not everything in this case, but certain things.
Well, there is. I mean, there's obviously medical value to marijuana, and I because of that, I still think of it as. When I was a young man and people around having their pop parties and their bongs and stuff, I didn't smoke it. I mean, I've tried it. I'm not like Bill Clinton, and I didn't inhale. I just never liked it. But I would go to the parties because I always do the food runs because you can make a lot of money on the food runs for a pop party. I mean, people will literally throw money at you as you're going out the door, and as long as you bring back enough bags of stuff, everyone's happy.
Yeah, all the snacks and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the munchies hit in, and that's.
It's KBKW's Coffee Talk. It is 7:21, and with me is Stephen Arms, historian, and of course you have your YouTube channel,
which is Arena of History. Though I have to make some apologies right now. I put up our shows here, but I've been having some problems with my computer. I haven't put any videos up lately, but I'm going to order a new computer today. So, and of course I do articles for the Senior Sunset Times, but Arena of History, ARENA. You can still look and find me there.
Now, do you have to do the work you're doing? Do you have to have a tower and a fairly standard computer?
Well, we don't need. My system is just getting old, and it's at the point it needs to be replaced because a lot of I have some software that's running really slowly, and that's one of the ones. But I can still do the audio editing without any problem. But when I do my video editors, they're getting to the point of slow that the frustration level is getting so high that I just said, okay, fine. I've had this system for a while. I just need to get a new.
How long have you had it?
10 years.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I mean the new ones, like I bought Lori a laptop that has way more power than any other computer with a tower and all the other fancy dan stuff that she had before.
I know they can, but they're kind of pricey. It's just I've just been stubborn. It's one of those things, and it's been shown. Unfortunately, I tried to do some editing. I shot a video a couple nights ago, and I started trying to edit it, and I just ended up deleting it and saying I'm just going to have to move on. But like I said, I'm ordering the computer today. It'll probably be here in a week, and then everything will be fine again. But it's still, you have I'll be putting up the Coffee Talk interviews there, and if I can get something, to work enough, I'll put up some other video in the meantime.
Now, one of the things you were going to talk about today was Memorial Day. How it got its start. It used to be called Decoration Day when I was.
Most people don't realize that, but that's what originally goes back to. Memorial Day, of course, was Monday, and it was originally called Decoration Day, like you were saying. There's some debate on where exactly it originated because it's individual cities, and generally had services. The Lyndon Johnson in his administration declared that it was Waterloo, New York, was the origin for Memorial Day. But 1868, General John Logan, who was the commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, he was the one who originally put forth that the 30th of May, and it was designated for the purpose, I'm quoting here, of strewing flowers and otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of the country. And it's mostly then against the late rebellion against the Union. So, it originally started out as a Civil War holiday.
But it was a Union holiday. It
was a Union holiday, but the Confederate, when they went to Arlington, remember Arlington has Confederate soldiers in it too. People, both the Union and the Confederates were, because and it is appropriate, as Lincoln would say, fitting and proper that we do this, because you have to remember, if you take all of the other wars that we've ever fought and you add all the casualties together, and the Civil War and all of them others combined are about the same now.
Oh, in other words, if you take
World War I, World War II,
Vietnam,
Korea, Revolutionary War, Spanish-American War, War of 1812, add up all the deaths combined, the Civil War had as many deaths as all of them combined.
Well, it's about 600,000, correct, between the two sides?
Up and down, 600,000 to 800,000, because there's casualties directly from the war who died. Of course, most of them were not killed by the bullets originally and the wounds originally. They died of complications from the injuries because you didn't have. You didn't
penicillin.
have penicillin. You didn't even have. They had sulfa powders, but they didn't even have anything that could actually deal directly with infection. One thing I thought was interesting about it is that it actually doesn't become part of an official holiday of the United States until actually in this century. I think it was around 2001 when they officially declared a bunch of holidays, and they established them as it's the last Friday of the month of May. So then you have, last Friday. So you have, or is it the last Monday? Monday, excuse me. The last Monday of of May. Then therefore they make 3-day weekends. Is why they did with a lot of the holidays.
Yeah, President's Day is.
They did that, but again, that wasn't actually done, I think, until 2001 officially. It's interesting that some of the other parts of the country still have some celebrations for Memorial Days on different days. The National Holiday Act, again, I was talking about, actually officially all of it was converted over in 2000, but originally that's from 1971, originally when it was put into place. But there are some that still honor the Confederate dead holidays in the individual states. And we're talking, Texas, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, Louisiana. They still have it because, And as you should. It's part of American history. The soldiers that fought in the Civil War, everyone says, oh, well, they're, the horrible this and that. I go, they were fighting for what they thought was, they were not... Slavery is the cause of the Civil War when you look at it from a historical point of view, because it's the one factor, if I take it out, I can stop the war.
But economics was also a huge factor.
But mostly it has to do with rights of states. Slavery became a focus issue on it because of the states' individual rights. They were saying, we have a right to have slaves because they wanted to, and then get into the illogicalness of that and everything. We talked a little about that last time. Those soldiers, they were fighting for what they believed to be the rights of the states versus the Union, because again, 90% of them didn't own slaves. I mean, so it wasn't an issue. As much of, they didn't think of, that we're here to oppress the slave. We're here to fight for the freedom of the South, they thought. And, you can't, just because we don't like it now doesn't mean that what they did for then is any different. You always have to judge history by its day.
Because the culture was different. There was a lot of things that were different back then. I mean, and you had families fighting each other. I mean, when it gets to the point where a family is,
my family's from Missouri,
fighting a war. I mean,
my family is originally from Missouri, and from what I understand, that we had people on both sides of the Civil War, fighting for the Union and fighting for the Confederacy.
I'm sure we did, although we did have Irwin McDowell was a great grandfather or whatever in the family, and he was a Union, Battle of Bull Run. But I know there was also some McDowells that were fighting in the South,
which wasn't a surprise. Isn't a surprise because people went both ways. Even with especially when you had border states, some of the ones that were not Missouri falls in that category.
Robert E. Lee, the reason he fought for the South is because he believed more in states' rights than he did in
and also because he wasn't going to take arms against Virginia. He thought of himself as a Virginian, right, first and foremost, and that and Robert E. Lee is a general who is deserving of praise. He's probably one of the best American generals we've ever had.
Well, Lincoln wanted him.
Oh, Lincoln wanted him,
yes,
no doubt. Lincoln wanted him.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is people. Like I said, the one of the big lessons as a historian, I always want to tell people is want to have your own opinions by doing research, but you have to always judge history by its time. You have to look at how the people thought then. People look at it now and say, oh, well, how could they possibly believe they all had to be hypocrites? Just don't measure people by your own yardstick, because you may find out that you're not much of a ruler. Okay? So people have to be able to look at it from the point of view of its time, not from whatever ridiculous moral quote-unquote ideas they have now.
Well, we're going to be taking a break, and then we'll be back.
If you wish to join the quest for knowledge, the battle for truth, please hit the like button, recommend my channel to others, and of course, subscribe. Thank you kindly.